Hi, welcome to the Retirement Railroad Matinee Modeling Tip of the Day. I'm Steve, and today we once again continue with our Building Chicago series, this being episode 9 and part 4 of infrastructure. And this week's infrastructure project relates to the trolley line that will be running around the Union Station area. So with that, let me head on over to the west end of Chicago at Union Station, and I'll explain what we're going to work on. Oh, my favorite words. All right, so of course we have Union Station here. The platform's down low. There will be a line of buildings in front of the scene divider there, and there'll be a scene divider here, and the L tracks will run across here. Now I've placed this track temporarily just so I can show you. This will be the trolley track. And yes, these are extremely tight turns, and locomotives and freight cars, etc. will not make it. However, that said, a 2-axle trolley, such as this, will make these turns without a problem. Okay? And that's what we're going to work on. So, the trolley will be controlled by a motorman, an Iowa Scaled Engineering Motorman, which is just simply a reversing type of situation. But there's going to be 4 track sensors. Okay? And in addition, it will be able to be run manually on either DC or DCC. So that will be a future episode of Tips of the Day as I show you how we're going to do that. But to prepare for that, we have to get the track in place and make ready for where the sensors will be going. There'll be one sensor going here. That will be the end of the line on one side. We'll have an intermittent sensor here where the trolley will stop for a given amount of time. Now with that L platform here, you will not see how this ducts into the buildings, inside the buildings. So the trolley will appear coming down underneath the L. It'll stop here, and I can control the amount of time, probably 15, 20, 30 seconds, somewhere here. And it'll start up again and come around this direction. It will make an S turn and come to the back side of Union Station, where another intermittent sensor will be. And they're the sensors are train spotters. And I use a different style than or at least a different application for the ones they have available. They have 3 different train spotter sensors available. They have the standard under the track. They have a remote under the track, which is a little bit lower profile. And then they have one that sits up above the track and shoots across. All right. That's what I use, but I don't use it in that manner. Okay. I'm going to show you exactly what I mean by that. I modified their implementations, and they've worked flawlessly over at Aurora on that motor. So, all right. So I have this track down. I had it tacked in place. It is not glued yet. It will be. So I'm going to pull up the track pins. I've taken a pencil and gone around and outlined where the track will be, and we'll come back and relay it. But I need to show you how these sensors are going to mount. Okay. And what I've done on the track is there are a couple of spots, because it's cut away to put the sensor in after the track is laid. There's a reason behind that. I have gone ahead and drilled out holes on the sides of the ties because it's cut away where the ties actually would be nailed in that location. Right. You'll see what I'm talking about here in a second. Pulling these track pins out. I'm going to give another tip of the day concerning how I prep this track. Alright, so now you can see where the track is going to be laid. And you can see where I've cut out here and here. Hopefully you can see both spots. You can see one spot. Now you can see the other spot. Here and here. Okay? And these sensors, after the track's laid, simply come up through and lay in this slot. Okay. Now, all but where the little sensor actually is will be covered with a strip of styrene. Underneath here, where after I've cut it out, I've added a small strip of styrene. Up underneath as a shelf for these sensors to lay on. Okay? And I didn't glue the ones over there. I don't plan on gluing these here. I will have staple a channel for the wiring. But that's how I have prepped for the actual sensors and for the track. Now I have two more sensors to add in, and we'll get right after that, so stay tuned. Alright, so we got the first piece laid. It's tacked down, it's glued down, it's ready to go. The cutaways for the train spotter sensors are ready. I've gone ahead using the Dremel tool with a cutoff disc, evened out the rails, cutting off the excess due to the bending. The next thing I have to do is I have to clean up the sides of these rails, so that the rail joiners and solder can transfer the electrical current. So what I use is simply a brush, a wire brush on my Dremel. So the next thing I have to do is slice away the little spikes, the molded plastic spikes, so that I can get the rail joiners in underneath the rail. Okay. Sorry about the brain fart there. Now, I use, and I know I've shown this before on Tips of the Day, I use this little homemade tool. It's not nothing I invented. something I picked up off of somebody else's streams. I think Charlie Bishop, Chadwick Mile Railway, I think is the first place I saw it, and I've seen it numerous places since. But you just slip your rail joiner on. Alright. And that allows you to get a better angle on the rail. And there it goes on. Pretty simple. It doesn't tear up your fingers. Oh, that slid off on me. Back on. Okay, now that we have the cutaway for the train spotter sensor in place and the plastic shelf underneath there for it to lay on, I've gone ahead and added the 2 strips of copper tape, and attached to it are the 3 bulbs, one for here, here, and here. That'll light up the mezzanine platform and backlight the doors leading out of the gallery into the mezzanine area. Okay, so with that, let's turn the lights off. Alexa, lights off. Alexa, lights off.
Okay.
And in about 30 seconds, we'll have, I'll edit out, we'll have lights. And there we go. The 3 new lights. Just a little bit. And if we lower it down, okay, we can see how the light is shining through here. I want to move that bulb over just a tad to the left. Help center it some. Yeah, there we go. That'll do the trick. Alright, so that's the lighting aspect of this infrastructure segment. Now we're ready to go ahead and continue with our track. Alright, so we got our second section of track laid in. And I've got a couple of these old Tyco transformers. And anytime on something like this, I like to test out as I do each piece of track. Now I have soldered the rail joint here, and spiked the track, and used some Quick Seal Plus to anchor it, glue it. So with that, let's give her a try. And you can see it navigates these tight corners real well. All right, so time for the next track. Alright, so here we are. I've already taken the liberty of cutting away this plate here, this wood facade, so that the motorman, and I've already taken the liberty of replacing the initial plate that comes with the motorman, which is about that size, and putting the optional switch plate on. Okay, so it fits right down in here, right like that. Now there's another panel that we'll get to next that goes here. That will allow us to switch. There'll be 2 switches and a rheostat. The rheostat will control the DC power, and the 2 switches, one will go is a reversing switch for the DC power, and the other one is a double pole, double throw to switch from DC to DCC in the manual mode. None of that works unless this switch goes to normal. Okay? If not, everything else is controlled by the motorman on this side. Okay? So let's get back after it. I've got the track power disconnected from the transformer so that it can hook right on in to the motorman. Right there. Okay? There'll be another lead that goes from here to the double pole, double throw that switches from DC to DCC. Okay? But in the meantime, we still have to wire up our sensors. Now I've got the one sensor on the left over there already in place. And wouldn't you know it, I hooked this up without bringing it through here. That'll make it awful hard to work. So now I've got these sensors, this sensor, these 3 wires, come up through here, and that will hook into these terminals right along here. Okay, if you can see that. Now there's not a lot of extra wire, and when I thought I ordered 2 more train spotter sensors for a total of 4, they only ordered 1. So we're only going to have 1 intermittent stop to begin with, and that'll be at Union Station. So let's get these wired up, and there's terminals for the left sensor, the right sensor, and the intermediate sensor. So we'll get those all wired and give her a whirl. So stay tuned. So got the motorman mounted. I've got 2 sensors wired into it. My homemade panel is in and mounted, but it's not wired. Okay? I'll explain why here in a second. But just to explain this, the motorman, this is the extra switch that allows you to switch from motorman, right, over to off or normal operation, which means if you turn it to normal, it isolates off the motorman so you don't damage it, and you can run either DC or DCC based upon a controller. Okay, whether it's a power pack controller for DC or command control through DCC. Okay? Now, if I have a switch here, this one controls whether it's going to be DC or DCC. Okay? When it's on DC, instead of having to fiddle with a transformer in here, I put a rheostat out here where I can adjust the throttle speed. Right? And I can do the direction here. Right? So these are both double pole, double throws. This one is just one way or the other. This one is for the DC versus DCC. Also has a center off position. Now I did talk with Iowa Scaled Engineering today, and the train spotter that they sent me had 4 wires. The ones that come with the motorman only have 3. And there's really not a good wiring diagram or any explanation as to about the other one. So I did talk to them today, and they said the extra wire, which is blue, is not needed. Okay, for this application, he says you can go ahead and snip it off. And I said okay, but I thought they came in pairs and it didn't, so I had to order another one. The 4-wired one only had a 2-foot lead, so I got to extend those leads. I put in a request for a 3-wired version, like the ones that came with the motorman, and they've got a much longer lead, so I can reach the whole distance. So we're going to get the 4-wire lead with the blue wire snipped off. We'll get it mounted tomorrow and wire all this stuff up and try to test it out some. So hang tight, and to the miracle of editing, you'll see it tomorrow right away. All right, bye. So as I mentioned, through the miracle of technology and editing, we're back the next day. As you can see, the trolley is running. It is currently running on the Motorman under its control. The knob's turned all the way to the left. All right. And the Motorman has the capability with this optional additional switch plate to turn it over to normal. For instance, my track is DCC controlled, so I can hook it up and it would do DCC manually. I can get on my throttle and I can run this engine. But I wanted to take it a step further. I wanted to be able to not only run the Motorman, which you can use DC or DCC, it's just a matter of addressing the locomotive, or I wanted to be able to run it manually under DC control or DCC control. Okay? And the Motorman, as it's set up with this optional switch plate, you can do one or the other, but you can't do both. Unless you do what I did here. All right? Now I've got a transformer sitting right down there, a cheap Tyco old transformer sitting in there. And I've got it hooked up to this 12 volt dimmer switch, a rheostat. All right? That allows me to control the power, just like the throttle on a power pack, out here instead of in there. And it also has an off position. Also, instead of having to get into the drawer and turn the direction, I put a double pole, double throw switch in here. Okay? So that I can change the direction out here. But I also wanted to be able to run DCC manually. So I added this switch, which is a double pole, double throw with a center off position. All right? If I switch it that way, I'm on DC control. If I switch it this way, I am on DCC control. But only when this switch is on normal. Okay? So, we're going to switch it over real quick. We're going to leave it on DC. So, that's the first thing we have to do. We have to make sure we're on DC. So, let's switch it to DC. I still have to label them. And I'm going to turn that off. And then I'm going to turn it to normal. Okay? Now the throttle is already wide open. So my rheostat here is the control. Right. And I can control the speed utilizing this. Now the sensors are not active when you do this. So I just reversed it manually to bring it back around. And I can do it again. Okay? Now why would I want to do that? If children come to visit, or I like to make things interactive. There's a lot of animation, different things on the layout and everything, but the last thing I want them to do is start grabbing at stuff. Okay? By bringing them over here, I can tell them you can touch this switch and this switch and let them run this trolley around Union Station. So this back line, when it's on the Motorman, the trolley never gets to. Okay? And that back line will be embedded inside, actually from here around down to that corner down there, is embedded inside a building. It'll look much like this one is sitting there is. So that's the whole idea here, is to be able to put it on DC and let little kids run the train. Okay? Now, let's switch it over to DCC. This is a DC trolley, so we got to take it off the track. We'll put this little switcher on, and we'll address it, and it's loco 6, set, and now I can run manually off my throttle my DCC locomotives. Now, keep in mind, the only locomotives that are going to run on this, whether it's DC or DCC, are 2 axles, because the turns are much too tight for 4-axle double truck locomotives. But again, it's designed for that trolley. Now, eventually, I want to get another one of these trolleys and put DCC in it with a keep alive, even though it really doesn't need it on this track. But and you won't ever see any of this track work because the track will be embedded in the pavement, much like Aurora is. So I still have another sensor on order for down here underneath the L tracks when I get those built. So it'll be making 2 visible stops and then 2 endpoints inside of buildings. Okay. And all the buildings are removable, and there will be open access out of view where I can get to them as well. So, with that, I want to thank you for joining me here at the Retirement Railroad Tip of the Day. This has been a cool project to work on. And I had envisioned it for a long time. A little bit challenging, figuring out the wiring and making sure it would all fit in the given space I had and so forth. So, again, thanks for joining me here at the Retirement Railroad Matinee Modeling Tip of the Day. I'm Steve, and y'all have a great day. Bye now. All right, so lesson learned. Again, this is one of those don't do what I do until at least I tell you how I screwed up and fixed it. On Alright, got a second here. I originally put in this rheostat with an off position to control the manual portion of the DC for the trolley, of course. And not all rheostats, dimmer switches, are created equal. This is designed for lighting, not for motor control. And it's 3-wired, and basically what it is hot in, hot out, and ground, which works great for lighting because you don't have a polarity reverse. However, on a motor control, you do. So, after the initial testing, as I showed, the next day I went to try it all out again, and guess what? It didn't work. So it just flat, ran full speed the whole time, no control, no off. And I said, well, that ain't gonna work. Okay? So got rid of that and got this motor speed control. All right, with a built-in reversing switch. So my reversing switch is irrelevant. Okay. So I got this one, and it works great. All right, we'll turn it on and switch over. It's currently in the off position on the Motorman. We're going to go to normal. The normal is in the off position because remember we have a choice here between DCC and DC. So we'll flip it to DC and turn it on at the on-off in reverse, and control speed. And everything works hunky-dory. Okay? So, if you're going to set up a manual control with a rheostat, make sure you get a motor control one. This one was great. Got it off of Amazon, delivered next day, and installed that night. And everything's working perfectly. And this is the next day after the install, after I ran it a bunch last night. So we're good to go. And again, with that, I want to thank you once more for joining me here on the Retirement Railroad. I'm Steve, and y'all have a great day. Bye now.